بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الخلق مصطفى الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أما بعد. Alright, so we began our discussion on the attribute regarding Allah's power, Allah's divine ability, saying that Allah has a divine power, meaning that He has power over everything that He has created. Everything that exists, we believe, is the creation of Allah. And by default, if Allah is the one who created it from nothing, it would only follow that He is able to change it however He wants, right? Or cause it to not exist. For example, when we say something changes from one state to another, the previous state no longer exists and the new state does exist. So when we say that Allah is all-powerful, what we mean is that He's the one who initially created, and if He initially created something, He has the power to cause that thing to no longer exist. Likewise, He's able to create something that is equally similar to that thing. So now, if all of the universe is made up of substances or particles, substances, and accidents or attributes, then if Allah is able to create one substance, He can easily create another substance that's like it or that's similar to it, right? If He can create one accident, He can create another accident. There's no issue there, right? So now, for example, if we say something like somebody's hair turned from black to white, the change that occurs there is that the existence of a particle with the accident of the color black was in creation. And then Allah stopped creating that and chose to create the same particle, but with a new attribute instead, a new accident, the accident of gray or the color white, etc. Right? So when we say that Allah is all-powerful, all we mean is that He's able to, He has already created the entire universe and everything besides Himself. And if that's the case, then He's able to create something similar to it, okay? And that breaks down to each and every individual atom that exists in our universe. And then we said that Allah's power is not linked or correlated to things that are rationally impossible. And we explained why. All right, so things like Allah creating another God, for example, is not possible. It's not possible for Allah to, for example, make someone moving and still at the exact same time, right? And then we explained that there's a difference between saying that there's two things that are opposite that exist at the same time from the same angle of understanding or the same angle of perception. What we mean by that is, for example, it would be possible for me to say so-and-so is moving and still at the same time if I say moving from one angle and still from a different angle. And I gave the example of a person in the elevator, right? If a person's in an elevator going to the tallest building that exists, from the outside, we would see that person as moving. He's moving from a low location to a high location. But from him inside of the elevator, him and the cup in front of him is perfectly still. He doesn't see the cup move up and the stuff, that's inside the cup, the coffee that he's drinking, it doesn't start spilling all of a sudden. It's perfectly still, right? And he's perfectly still with it. So from his angle, he's still. From our angle, he's moving. So it would be possible to say that he's moving and still at the same time if the angles differ. But if the angles are the same, then it's impossible for two opposites to exist at the same time. Why did we say this? Because somebody brought the argument that says, is it possible for Allah to know something will exist, yet that thing does not come into existence? Or is it possible for Allah to know something will not exist, yet that thing is possible to exist, right? So when we say that, for example, in the future, inshallah, if I have a son, I say that's rationally possible. But what if Allah knows that my future says that there's not going to be a son? Is it still rationally possible? So we said that from the angle of it itself, having a son or not having a son, that is rationally possible. But when we look at it from the angle of Allah's knowledge, then it's impossible. So we say that me having a son is possible and impossible at the same time. Ameen, shukran. So we say that it's possible and impossible at the same time. It's possible min haythu dhatuhu, right? In and of itself, it's essentially possible, right? But because Allah knows that I'm not going to, and Allah's knowledge cannot be, we cannot go against Allah's knowledge, right? Something cannot come into existence that Allah didn't previously know. So because of Allah's knowledge, we say that it's impossible, right? Or the exact opposite. If Allah knows that I'm going to have 10 sons, inshallah, then He knows that I'm going to have this in the future. Now it's possible for me to have 10 sons or 9 or 8 or 5 or 1 or nothing. It's possible, right? But because Allah knows that 10 will happen, now 10 sons becomes necessary for me. So we say that my sons' existences are wajib, are necessary. At the same time, they're possible. Why? Because the angles differ. Okay. So that was a response to that. And then Imam alGhazali begins on another counter argument that somebody makes, and this is where we left off last week. Okay. This counter argument summarizes what's called خلق أفعال العباد, the creation of the actions of human beings. Okay, that's what the issue is titled. That's what it's called, or what it's famous for. Okay, now the difference of opinion with regards to this stems from the argument that from for example the Mu'tazila, when they say that actually, you know what, before we go into what each group say, we'll break down what the difference is. So I wrote previously when I was preparing for the class, I put it on the whiteboard here, if you guys can see this. All right, I'm not sure if it's readable or not, but I'll try and break it down as we go along. So this idea of our actions, okay, or the creation of our actions, can be put down into a tree like this, where we look at our actions, right? And we can either say that Allah is in control of our actions, okay? Or we can say Allah is not in control of our actions. Now, why is this an issue? Because we've said that Allah has qudra, Allah has divine power. So if Allah has divine power over all of His creation, and every atom within creation, every particle, every substance, then are we human beings am I not made up of particles as well? Right? Every movement that I make, or everything that I do, is the placement of the particles that are on my body in different places. That's what my actions are, right? So if I was to do something with my hand, it means that I'm choosing to specify the location of these particles to be over here, and then the ones on my fingers to grab something, for example, etc. If I choose to look at something, it means that I'm specifying the direction and location of my eyeballs to something specific, right? And I'm focusing either far or close, etc. Are these not all particles that are in a specific place, and all we're doing is changing the place of those particles? Yes, it is. So now the question is, well, we said that Allah is all-powerful over everything. So the question is, does Allah have power over our actions? Right? Is Allah in control of our actions? So that's where this breakdown comes from. So we say our actions, either Allah is in control or Allah is not in control. If we say Allah is not in control of our actions, what does that necessitate? That goes against what we just established. What did we just establish? That Allah has unique power or divine power over everything. So now if we say that, okay, well, Allah has divine power over everything except human beings, then in reality, Allah is not all-powerful, is He? Right? It means that, for example, I can move my hand, but Allah can't control my hand, right? Etc. So when we say that Allah is all-powerful, and then we say, oh, but Allah is not in control of, or Allah is in control of everything, but He's not in control of human beings, then in reality, we're saying that Allah is not actually in control, and that's impossible, right? Because Allah is the one who created us. If He's the one who created us from nothing, it would be illogical to say that now after He creates us, He no longer can control us. He can no longer do anything to us. Rather, every action of ours is controlled by Allah, right? But now, if that's the only other option, that every action of ours is controlled by Allah, that Allah is in control of our actions, then it would necessitate one of two things. The first is that if we say Allah is in control of our actions, and they're our actions. What does it mean to be our action? It means we're the ones who's doing it, as in we're in control. So I'm in control of my hand. If I want to put my hand in front, I can put my hand in front. If I want to put it back, I can put my hand back. I'm in control of my hand. So and that's what makes it my action, right? So if I'm in control of my hand and Allah is in control of my hand, this necessitates two doers of one action. Question, is it possible to have two doers of one action? The answer is no, right? And this is the general answer, or the base answer. For example, if I was to tell you, I've given this example before, I believe. If there was a weight in front of me that weighed 10 kilograms, and me and you shared in lifting the 10 kilograms, both of us are not lifting 10 kilograms. One of us is lifting 5, the other is lifting 5. One is lifting 7, the other is lifting 3. Right? Or say, for example, I'm really strong and I'm lifting 9 and you're lifting only 1. Right? Because we're two people shared on one action, the action has to be split and divided between us two. It can't be the case that we're both sharing the same action and I'm lifting 10 and you're lifting 10. That would necessitate that we're lifting 20. But the action, the weight of this thing is only 10. Make sense? So the same thing if I was to if there's a really heavy door and we wanted to push this door open. So you come, I try to do it myself, I can't do it. You come to help me and you do it. There's more force when you come and help to when I'm doing it alone. Because, for example, my force level is maybe 50. I can push 50 tons, for example, and you can push 20. So together we can push 70, and that's how much the door weighs. Okay, so if it was not for both of us, where the force amount adds on additionally, we wouldn't be able to, or I wouldn't be able to move the door. Why is that the case? Because these two people are not sharing in the exact same action. If they were sharing in the same action, then if I wasn't able to push it at 50 tons of pressure that I could push with my arms, I could push 50 tons of pressure, and you could push only 20. If it was the same action, even both of us together, or even if we had 100 people trying to do the same action, the door wouldn't open. Why? Because the door weighs 70 tons. I can only push 50. You can push less than 50. Another person can push 60. At the end of the day, if it's the exact same action that we're all doing it, we're joining together on one action, then we wouldn't be able, not all of us together would not be able to open that door. Only if when we come together, it adds more and more pressure from each of us. My 50 plus someone else's 20 plus someone else's 60 comes together to make 130 tons of pressure, then we can push that door open. So what am I trying to explain here? I'm trying to explain that two people, or 3 or 4 or 5, cannot come together to cause an effect in one single action. Okay. If they do, that action would be split halfway between this and halfway between that, or partial ways between each individual who's sharing in this action. Okay. So if this is understood, then we understand that this first option is impossible. Okay. So when we say our actions, and we say that they're our actions, so we're in control of them, and Allah is also in control, that necessitates two doers of one action. That's impossible. Okay. So far we've established this first one is impossible. Okay. The second thing that this necessitates, right, if it doesn't necessitate two doers of one action, it would necessitate that we actually have no ability in reality. Okay. Why? Because we said that two people cannot come together on one single action. So now if I want to move my hand forward or backwards, if I want to move my hand forward, that's either happening by my power or it's happening by Allah's power. Allah's the one moving my hand forward, or I'm moving my hand forward. All right? It can't be that we're both moving my hand forward. So if it can't be that we're both moving my hand forward, then either it's Allah or either it's me. Now, if we've already established the first premise, which is that Allah is in control, if we've already established that Allah is in control, then that means that, okay, my hand movement forward is only because of Allah's creation. Allah is the one who was in control of that action, and that would necessitate that I have no ability over that action. Then he says, if we have no ability over our actions, what would be necessitated from that is we are not responsible for our actions. He says, it's in Islam, or this is the argument of the other people, someone trying to refute what we say about Allah's power. They say that, okay, in Islam, Allah commands you to do certain things. Allah tells you, go and pray. So now, does it make any sense for Allah to say, go and pray, but then in reality, you don't even have any power to pray? Or if Allah says, don't do X, Y, and Z action, but you don't have any power to do that action to begin with, does that make any sense? Right? It's like, imagine you're a person who has, or let's not say one of you, just a random person. There's somebody who was born with no hands, no arms, and no legs. And then I tell them, hey, can you go and climb the monkey bars in the playground? And I command them to do that. That would be nonsense, right? Because I'm commanding him to do something that he has no ability to do anyway, right? So now they say that it would be useless. All the commands in Islam would be completely useless. And if the commands in Islam are useless, all of Islam is useless to begin with. Because what is Islam? Islam is made up of commands and prohibitions. So if Islam is made up of commands and prohibitions, and we're arguing that all of this is useless, then there's no such thing as Islam anyway, right? Let whatever a person does, let's just say that, okay, that's just what Allah willed, and Allah is the one who created it. So how are we supposed to blame ourselves? Okay. So this is the breakdown of these. So now if we said that Islam is useless and there's no reason for religion or anything like this is obviously, if we're trying to prove Islam is a true religion, this is something that is not possible to be said. So it's not possible to say that we're not responsible for our actions. Likewise, what it stems from would also be proven false as well. Okay. So if by necessity, us having no ability means Islam is useless, but Islam cannot be useless, that means we have to have some ability, right? We have to have some type of ability. So us having no ability is also impossible. And from the other side, we said that if Allah is not in control of our actions, this goes against what we've already established, that Allah has unique and full divine power. So that's also impossible. So now every breakdown is impossible. So the question is, does Allah have power over our actions, or do we have power? What's the true answer to this? And this is where the groups of Islam have separated into different sects, as we will see. As we will see in a second. Okay, Allah is in control because without that 50% the effect can't take place. I will think about that and try to answer at the end of class, inshallah. Okay, so now Imam alGhazali, he says, from this whole issue, okay, now that we've broken down that as for our actions, because we can sense our ability to do things, is Allah in control or Allah is not in control? We have to, as Ahlulsunnah, we have to say that Allah is obviously in control, but we are established that that would be impossible because of these two reasons. So now if it's impossible for Allah to be in control, how are we still saying that Allah is in control? He says there are groups of scholars in Islam that went to different paths and opinions in this regard. Let me see if are you guys able to access Telegram while the class is going on? So I sent an image of a breakdown. It's essentially notes of this entire argument that Imam alGhazali is going to explain, and these notes, each section of these will be, inshallah, now broken down and explained very clearly. On the recording, I will try to have this put up on the screen, inshallah. Okay, so starting from this, if you guys open this up on Teams, And you know what? I'm actually going to, for the sake of everyone else as well, who's going to watch the recordings, what I'm going to do is send it in the group chat as well. So this will be in the Telegram group chat as well. So if you guys cannot see it on Teams, just go on the group chat and you'll be able to access that this file. Okay, so if you guys have this open, follow along with what we read, and then inshallah we will try to explain as we go along. The first thing he says is Mujbirah. Mujbirah are a group of people, okay, who came to the conclusion that us as human beings, we actually don't have a free will. We don't have the ability to do anything. Okay, why? Because of exactly what we established earlier, that Allah is uniquely powerful over all things, and you can't have two things powerful over one action. So if you can't have two things powerful over one action, and Allah's power is obviously superior because He's the one who created us to begin with, that establishes we don't actually have any type of power. Okay. The problem with this, Imam alGhazali says, is لزمها إنكار ضرورة التفرقة بين حركة الرعدة والحركة الاختيارية. The issue with saying that we actually have no free will and no power over something is that it necessitates that there has to be no difference between the movement of a person who is freezing cold and he's shivering, his body is shivering, okay, and a person who is choosing to move his hand, for example, just freely. He chooses to move his hand forward, backwards, right? Just a normal action that we do that is based off of our choice, okay? And likewise from this, you can give any type of example, such as our heartbeat. It beats we don't have any control over our heart. You can't just close your eyes and imagine, okay, I want my heart to stop beating, and then all of a sudden it's going to stop. No. But you can close your eyes and imagine, I want my hand to open from a fist, and it happens. And I want my hand to close into a fist. And you could just by imagining that and willing that, it can happen, right? But you don't have that control over your heart. So he says, if you say that we don't have actually a free will, and we don't have control over any of our actions, it means that there's no difference between these two types of actions. And that is something that is known by necessity, that it's false. They're human beings, as we exist and we are able to grasp reality. Reality around us shows us that there's a difference. And as a famous example, if somebody is denying this, all you have to do is take them to the top of a cliff and take another person to the top of the cliff. And obviously it's just an example, right? Not saying to actually do this. Don't actually do it, because it's problematic if you do. But you take two people to the top of a cliff and you ask the person who denies this, okay? The person who denies that there's a difference between these two actions, a forced action and an action done by this person's choice, okay? You then go and kick this person off the cliff to where he has no choice, but he's forced to fall, right? And then you tell the other person, jump at your own will. And then you ask this person who's watching, is there a difference between those two or not? And obviously he would have to say yes. He would say, one, poor guy, he had no control over his action, he was just forced to fall down. And the other guy, he had control over his action, he chose to stay one step back and he didn't choose to jump, right? So this is known by necessity. It's known by, just the, common sense, right? So basically, when they say that that there's no such thing as a free will for a person, or we're not able to choose our actions or do things that we will to do, or that we have or we have no power to do any action, this necessitates there's no difference between these two. But by necessity, there is a difference between these two actions. So that shows that the only difference between these two is that one we have power over and the other one we don't have power over. What's the difference between my heart beating and me at the same time as my heart beating, I open and close my hand? What's the difference? Right? The difference is I'm doing that with my free will. And my heart, I have no control over that. But this one I have control over. So the only difference between this is the existence of power that we have. So he says this first thing, if you go back to the notes, this first group of people, the Mujbirah, their statement is impossible, right? Okay. Then he says, what about the second statement? Okay. Imam alGhazali, he mentions a second impossibility for the first people. He says, aside from there being no difference, it also necessitates that Islam would be useless and meaningless, because what? It would be Allah commanding us to do things that we have no ability to do anyway. Okay. So it's like Allah is telling you, go and pray. And it's like, well, I can't pray anyway. I can only pray if you, oh Allah, if you make me pray. So then you just sit down in your bed all day, you don't do anything, and you say, well, I can't do anything anyway, right? So that's just, nonsense. Okay, then he says, the second group is the Mu'tazila. Okay, the Mu'tazila, they said that Allah has no power over our actions. Likewise, over the actions of other creations like animals. An animal chooses to do things. So could you repeat the last part, please? The last part, so essentially this second impossibility that is concluded from the statement of the first group of people. The first group of people are the Mujbirah. In the notes, if you read that Mujbirah, it says they denied our free will. We said the first impossibility is that there's no difference. It would necessitate, if we don't have free will, it would necessitate there's no difference between an action done by our choice and an action done not by our choice, like our heartbeat versus choosing to go and do something, right? The second impossibility that would be necessitated from this is it would necessitate Islam being completely meaningless and useless, because Islam is made up of commands and prohibitions. It would be as if Allah is telling you, go and pray, but now according to these people's madhab, we actually don't have power over our actions. So if we don't have power over our actions, we could just say to Allah, oh Allah, why are you telling us to pray, but I have no ability to pray, right? And that's nonsense. So if that is, when obviously you have the ability, you can get up right now, you can go make wudu, and you can go pray. So you have the ability to pray, all right? And everyone can understand this. But these people essentially rejected this, and they said, no, Allah is the only one in control. So if Allah wants me to pray, He will make me pray. Even if I don't want to. He'll just start controlling my hands, go make wudu for me, and then just force me. That's what they're arguing is the truth. Okay. So we say this is impossible. Why? Because it would necessitate Islam is useless. Because Islam is full of commands. Allah commands us to do certain things. If Allah commands us, it's only because we're able to do those things. If we were unable to, He would never command us to begin with. Right? Because Allah is all just. When Allah says, لا تكلف نفس إلا وسعها, that no soul is given a burden beyond what it's able to bear. Meaning Allah doesn't necessitate something upon a person, make something mandatory for this person to do, except if they're able to do it to begin with. If they're not able to do it, Allah wouldn't command it. Right? So the fact that Allah does command things within Islam shows that we do have an ability to do these things. So now, according to their madhab, it would be impossible, it would be nonsensical to have Islam as a religion, because Islam is full of commands and prohibitions. Hopefully that's clear. Does that make sense? Or is something unclear still? Okay. Alhamdulillah. Okay. Second group of people is the Mu'tazila. Okay. So the first is the Mujbirah, second is the Mu'tazila. Now if you open up the notes, this one goes into a few more details. Okay. We say, the Mu'tazila say that Allah has no power over our actions. So they say that everything that is like a human being, right, that has a kind of free will to do certain things or to not do certain things, human beings, jinn, animals, okay, they say Allah's power has no connection to these things. They're completely separate. Okay. Now, why did the Mu'tazila get to this conclusion or come to this conclusion? Okay. They came to this conclusion because aside from the initial problem with establishing that Allah has power and we also have power. Aside from that issue, okay, they said, if we say that Allah has power over human beings' actions, and then a human being does a bad deed or a bad action, that would be as if it's coming from Allah. And Allah is all just. Allah wouldn't do something that's oppressive. So for example, when there's a person who goes and kills somebody else unjustly, if Allah is the one who created that, that's establishing some type of evil for Allah, because Allah is the one who did it. We're not saying, if this human being did it, then he would be considered evil. We say this person is an evil person. How did he do that? But if we say that Allah is the one who did it, then we can likewise say that Allah is evil. But it's impossible for Allah to be evil. So they said, well, because of this, we have to say that Allah doesn't have power over human beings' actions. Okay? And so we have to say that human beings have their own power over their actions, and Allah has power over other things in a human being's life. Okay? So, for example, Allah can cause a hurricane to happen so that your house is destroyed. Okay. Now, Allah gave you ability to go and build a house. Allah gave you the wealth and the money. You're able to go and buy a house. So you have the ability to do these certain actions, but Allah has ability for things that are external and aside from your actions. So Allah has the ability to control and create and destroy everything that is aside from human beings and animals and jinns actions. Okay, now from the issues that comes from this, if you go down in the notes, I wrote problems, and I wrote two things. Imam alGhazali mentions two things. He says, number one is denial of consensus. What does this mean? The Muslims have unanimously agreed, right? They've agreed that Allah has complete control over all of our actions. Meaning, if, for example, if I wanted to move my hand, Allah has the ability to completely stop my hand from moving. Right? How does he do this? For example, paralyzed people. The person, he wants to move his hand, but he just can't. Right? Why? Because Allah doesn't allow it for him. And he does that through a certain way, such as, nerves in the spinal cord not connecting to, the body parts. So he does it through a certain means, but at the end of the day, Allah is the one who did that. Allah created him without the connection of those nerves to the brain. So he wants to move his hand, but he just can't. Why? Because Allah is in control. So likewise, at any moment for us, for example, I'm able to move my hand all I want to. I'm able to do whatever I want. If Allah wants to at any moment, He's able to completely stop that. Okay? So the Muslims have unanimously agreed on this issue. This is something that is, understood by necessity. That if Allah wants to, He's in control. He can do whatever He wants. Right? So that's problem number one, denying the consensus. Okay. Problem number two is attributing creation to one who doesn't have knowledge of what is being created. Where does this stem from? When the Mu'tazilis say that human beings create their actions, or human beings are in control of their actions, what they argue is that we are the creator of our actions. So the person who does evil, he creates the evil. So evil is not a creation of Allah. Evil is a creation of human beings. Okay. And again, they say this because if Allah was the one who created evil, then that would mean that Allah is evil himself. Because the creator of something can be described with that thing. If I create something so beautiful, it's only because I have an imagination that is beautiful, right? I can imagine something that is beautiful. But if I go and kill somebody, that evil only happens because of some evil that is inside of me. But if I'm not an evil person, I'm not going to go kill somebody. I wouldn't do something evil, right? So me doing that action and creating that killing of another person, that points to an attribute inside of me of something very dark and evil. If I didn't have that attribute at all, I would never go and kill someone. Make sense? So they say that if Allah was to create this evil thing, it would mean that there's something evil about Allah, and that's impossible. We can't say that Allah is evil. So the creation of these evil things has to be at the hands of human beings. Can't be at the hands of Allah. What's necessitated from this is attributing the action of creating something to someone who has no knowledge of what is being created. For example, when you are thirsty or hungry and you eat something or you drink something, that feeling of your hunger, being satiated. Give me 1 second. Okay, that feeling of your hunger going away and you feeling full. Did you create that feeling? The Mu'tazili say yes. We're the ones who did. That's my action. It's related to me. I'm the one who did that, right? Likewise, the opposite. If you feel hungry and you choose not to eat, you're starving yourself. You're creating that pain that's inside of your body. Okay. So now, how is it possible to create something when you have no knowledge of that thing? If I brought my favorite example, if I showed an iPhone, right? I brought an iPhone in front of me and I said, I made this thing. Somebody asked me the most basic thing about like electronics, and they'll say like, for example, what does a capacitor do? Or capacitor. I forgot what the word is. A resistor. What's a resistor do? And I'm like, I don't know. Meanwhile, the iPhone is full of resistors. How did I know where to put it? What to do with it? Right? Which type of resistor to choose if I don't even know what it is to begin with? So the minute I say, I don't know, that person automatically knows what? That the iPhone was not made by me. All right. The minute he asks me, okay, how does certain software work? Behind this program, what's some of the coding that's behind it? Is it made up of these types of statements, etc.? The minute I say, I don't know, he knows, you didn't make this. All right. I make a program that is like a game like Flappy Bird. When you push on the thing, the bird goes up and you let go and it falls down, right? And you have to get it through these things. Very simple. There would be something behind in the software behind this that says if the phone registers a user's touch, then make the location of the bird go up a certain amount for a certain period of time before it goes down again. Very simple program. It would say something like that. So now if you ask me, okay, give me a very, very simple breakdown of how the software is written behind this program, and I say, I don't know. You say, there's no way you wrote that program, right? This is something that is understood. In order to make something, you have to have knowledge of what's being made. So now question, when you eat something, do you have knowledge of every single atom and every cell and every what's it called? Everything that's inside of your internal system, what it's doing, such that the pain of your hunger goes away, such that you feel pain to begin with, such that you feel thirsty in your throat, you drink some water, all of a sudden you feel better. Do you know what's going on at the molecular level of every individual thing? No. We have no idea, right? So if you have no idea and you don't know, how can it be said that you create this thing? The fact that you say, I don't know how it works, and this is right now, we can say, later on, in recent times, we can say, okay, we have knowledge of it because of science. Question, were people only filling their stomachs after they had knowledge? No. There were people before we had knowledge that were filling. So how did they do it? Right? How did they do it without the knowledge that we have today? So today we might have a lot of knowledge of the biology and how everything works. You could say, yeah, I know how it works. When I put this down my throat, this is what happens. This comes and breaks this down and separates the the acid from this and that, and the fatty acids go here, and we know a whole process of what goes on because of our knowledge of science now. But the question goes, okay, what about the people before? Did they have this knowledge? No. Did they still do the action? Yes. Okay, so how did they create the action without knowledge? The fact that they say that they didn't have any knowledge, or we know that they didn't have knowledge, shows that they could not have been the creator of these actions. So this is the impossibility that is that rises from the statement of the Mu'tazila. Then Imam alGhazali says, as for Ahlulsunnah, he says, we, number one, say that both of those two previous things are impossible, which is what I just explained. Why the first one, denying our free will, is impossible, and also why saying that Allah has no power or control over our actions is also impossible. So he says, what do we say then? If we say that those two are impossible, then what do we say? We say that there are two attributes of power. You can read this on number 1 of what we say under Ahlulsunnah in the notes image that I sent. Right? We say, number one, that there are two attributes of power for one action. So now, in that previous breakdown where we said that two people cannot come together to cause one effect, similar to that statement, we're saying something that there are two attributes of power that exist for this one single effect. So now my hand moving forward stems from an attribute of power that's within myself and an attribute of power that's from Allah. Okay. However, what's the difference between these two? Because what we said was two things cannot come together on one action. Now pay attention here because this gets very detailed. If two actors cannot come together on one single action, that's only the case if the angle of their relationship to this action is unified. Similar to what we said before about how we can say somebody is moving and still, if the angle by which we're making this ruling is different. So a person who sees from far this person is moving, he would say this person is moving from his angle. The person who's all the way up there, they see themselves as still, so from his angle, he's still. So it's moving and still at the exact same time, but the angles differ. Likewise, we say that we have power and Allah has power, but our powers differ. Okay. The type of power or the type of relationship that our power has to this action differs. Because what else did we say? When we established an attribute, or when we establish any attribute, such as power, we say that it has to be connected to something, right? So if Allah's power is connected to the creation of something, then, if there's something, and we say that happened from the power of Allah, it means that Allah's power had some type of a connection to that thing. The type of connection differs. And there are different types of connection. Imam alGhazali, he says that there are different types of connections that an attribute can have to an action or something in existence. Okay. What are these different types of connections? He says, just as we say that it's possible, just as we say that the universe had a relationship and a connection to Allah's power before Allah caused the universe to exist. How do we say this? Because when we describe Allah having power, Allah being al-Qadir, Allah being Qadir, Allah being all-powerful. Okay, before the creation of the universe, we're saying Allah is all-powerful. What is He all-powerful over? If we already said Allah's power has nothing to do with Himself, He doesn't cause change in Himself, He only has power over other things, well, there's nothing in existence. So what do you mean He's all-powerful, right? Yet we say, before the existence of something, Allah has power to cause that thing to come into existence. After that thing comes into existence, Allah has power over the existence of that thing. This is similar to when you have, for example, we say Allah is the creator. If Allah is the creator, what about before the creation of anything? Somebody's only a creator if they create something. So before Allah created anything, how do you say Allah is the creator? We say Allah is able to create before He creates something. After He creates something, we say He's the creator because He did create. Okay, so you see that there's a difference between the two connections that I'm making with the attribute to the thing. So when I say that Allah is the creator of all things, before all things existed, the relationship between His attribute of being the creator and all things is that He has the ability to create all things. Yet after He created all things, that connection, that ta'alluq changes to that He is the creator of everything, as in He did create everything. Make sense? What am I trying to show here? I'm trying to show that there can be a different type of connection or relationship that one attribute has to a certain action. Okay. When we understand this, then we can say that our power over our action has a different type of connection than Allah's power over our action. So we say, what is this different type? Okay, Allah's power over our action is in the sense that He creates the action. Our power over our action is not in the sense that we create the action. Our power over the action is what's called غير مؤثرة. غير مؤثرة means we don't initiate or cause the effect that comes out of that specific action. Rather, our power or ability to do this only becomes a condition for that action actually happening. So we say that yes, we have the ability to do something, right? That comes from our will. We have the ability to do this thing, but that ability is not something that puts that action into existence. So now, if I want to move my hand forward, I'm not the one who's who's creating the placement of these particles in this position rather than this position. My power is only a condition for that action happening. That action happens because of my will. Okay. So my will is to move my hand forward. That action happens. The condition of that action happening is that I have to have a type of ability over it, but that ability that I have has no effect on the creation of that thing, whereas Allah's attribute of power or ability over this action is from the angle of being able to create. So when we say that I moved my hand forward, from the relationship of it being attributed to me, I say I moved my hand forward because it was through my will, which enacted my power to do something, my ability to do something, but my ability did not create that action. Okay, just like before Allah created the universe, His ability to create didn't create the universe, right? When we say Allah was all powerful and He had power, but that power didn't create anything before the universe was created. Then after the universe was created, we say His power was connected to the universe in the sense that it was created through His power. Likewise, the same way Allah has qudra, Allah has power, but there was nothing that it created at one point, right? We also have the power over these actions that we do, but it's not creating anything. Okay. Allah is the one who creates our actions based off of our free will. Now, Imam alGhazali says that this is something, we don't use this terminology, neither in Arabic nor in English. I don't say something like, I have power to do something, but my power is ineffective, right? Instead, he says this is what the meaning is behind this statement. Okay, when we're establishing how is it possible for us to do something if we're not able to do it and Allah's in control, right? Or if we're able to do it and Allah's not in control, how are we able to say that Allah is in control and we are also able to do this action? Allah has power over it and we have power over it. Our power is ineffective, Allah's power is effective. What's another way to elaborate on this? He introduces the doctrine of what's called Kasb. Kasb, kaf, sin, ba in Arabic, is a word that's used in the Quran. Allah says, when He talks about on the Day of Judgment, everyone will be responsible for the actions that they do. How does Allah elaborate on these actions that a person does? Okay. Because again, if the actions were done by Allah, then we can't be responsible for it, can we? Right? So now Allah is going to tell us that we're responsible for our actions. How does Allah elaborate on this? He says, "Laha ma kasabat." For every soul will be what it has earned. Kasb comes from to earn something. Okay. For every soul will be what it has earned. Okay. So whether it's a good deed or a bad deed, Allah elaborates on our actions, whether good or whether bad, by this word called kasb. Kasb is simply our will to do something, and Allah creates our action based off of our will if He wants to. And if He doesn't want to, He will not create our action. So now from this, we get the question, or actually, you know what, I'll explain this first. For example, if I will to become a millionaire tomorrow, that's my will. My will is I'm going to wake up and I'm going to find $1 million beside me right now. Allah doesn't will for that to happen. Just because I willed it doesn't mean Allah wills it, right? So just because I will something, it doesn't mean Allah has to create that now. No. Likewise, if I don't will something, Allah can also create that thing. So how many times is it that you don't you're driving down the highway, or not how many times, because hopefully it's never happened with you guys. But how many times do you see it commonly? A person's driving and out of nowhere, another car comes in front and they smash into them and get into an accident. Was that something that was in their will? No, yet it happened, right? So Allah creates without our will, and He doesn't create with our will at times. Yet at other times, with our will He creates, and without our will He doesn't create. So there's 4 intellectual possibilities here. We will something and Allah wills it. We will something and Allah does not will it. We do not will something and Allah wills it. We do not will something and Allah does not will it. The first example would be, I will to move my hand forward. I just did it, so that means Allah also willed it. Okay, so I will and Allah wills. I'm going to go pray. I will to pray. That's my intention. And Allah creates the prayer. Okay, so Allah's will corresponds with my will. The second example, where I will something, but Allah doesn't will it, is me willing to become a millionaire, or me willing after I'm on the 5th story of my building. If I jump off the balcony, I will to fly, but I'm not going to fly because Allah's will doesn't correspond with my will here. The third option is that I do not will something, but Allah wills it. That's, for example, I'm driving and a car comes and smashes. I didn't will for that, but it happened. And the fourth is that I did not will something, but Allah also did not will that thing. So I do not will to commit a certain sin. I don't actually do that sin, so that means Allah's will also corresponded with my will. Allah didn't create that sin for me. Okay, so now this is how this is what is represented in the famous hadith that's in it's in the Arba'in of Imam al-Nawawi. It's in the 40 hadith of Imam al-Nawawi. Okay, and that the Prophet ﷺ says that Allah has certainly written down and predestined all good things and all bad things. Okay, and then he says, the hadith says, ثُمَّ بَيَّنَ ذَلِكَ, that the Prophet ﷺ then explained, what does it mean that Allah has predestined these things? Now, okay, if Allah predestined something, what happens to our free will? If Allah predestined it, and He knows that it's going to happen, then do I really have power over doing that thing? All right. So he explained this, that what it means that Allah predestined all the good and bad. Sorry, the hadith says that He predestined the rewards and the punishments of these good and bad things. That's what it's talking about. Okay, he wrote down the rewards and punishments of good and bad things. And what is meant by this? He says, if a person wills to do something good and then he actually does do that good thing, he gets 10 rewards. If a person wills to do something good and then he doesn't end up doing that thing, he gets a reward as if he did it. Question, how is Allah rewarding a person if he didn't even do something? It's because of His will. So this goes directly back to what we're talking about, which is that something does not come into existence, right? Whether it's when I have the choice, I have the ability to move my hand forward, right? I say I have the ability. What do I mean by that? I mean only that I can will for that thing to come into existence. That's it. Because my power is not a power of creation. I'm not creating the atoms and recreating their position over here. I'm not doing any of that because I don't know any detail. I don't even know, I can't even break down how many atoms my hand is made of. I don't know anything. So how is it to say that I'm not creating anything, right? I have power over moving my hand here means I have the ability to choose that I want this thing to happen. That's what my power and ability over something means. Okay, I have the ability to will for that thing. Okay, so now when Allah rewards a person for their actions, He's not going to reward you for the actions only, free from the will. Why? Because our actions are not our creation. Make sense? So now remember the problem that we mentioned before, where the Mu'tazila, they were saying a person who does something evil, he goes and kills somebody, they believe that Allah is going to punish that person for doing that evil action. But Allah is saying no in this hadith. He's not going to punish a person for doing an evil action. What He's going to punish a person for is for willing to do that evil action. Why? Because that's what we have the ability to control, our will. We can choose to do something bad, choose to do something good. But at the end of the day, Allah is the one who creates that thing. Okay. So we're not responsible for the action itself. We're responsible for our intention behind the action. Make sense? So now he says, if a person does something good, if they will to do something good, and then فَمَنْ هَمَّ بِحَسَنَةٍ, that's what the hadith says. Whoever wills to do something good, and then he goes and does that good thing, then he has 10 rewards. Why does he have more reward if because he gives two options: a person who wills to do something good and then he does it, a person who wills to do something good and he doesn't do it. Why does one have more than the other? This is what's called tawfiq. Tawfiq is that Allah blesses a person with the ability to do something. Okay? Or Allah blesses the person with the fruition of that which he willed to do. Okay? So we say, oh Allah, give me tawfiq to do X, Y, and Z. What does that mean? Oh Allah, create this action for me. Right? Make it actually happen. Don't make it where I just will it and that's it. Because you're going to be rewarded for your will. So I will to go and pray. You'll be rewarded for that will. Fine. Right? But oh Allah, give me the tawfiq to go and pray. In other words, oh Allah, create that action. I actually want to do it. So then when you go and pray, you can say, Allah gave me the tawfiq to pray. What does that mean? That Allah blessed me with the ability, with this action actually coming into existence. And that's why we say that every good deed that we do is actually a blessing from Allah that He creates for us. And it's not that we are going to earn Jannah by our actions. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ said that none of you will enter Jannah by your actions only. And the Sahaba said, okay, we can understand that for us, maybe because we're human beings and we commit sins or whatever, but even you, O Messenger of Allah? And he said, even me, even my actions will not get me into Jannah. What does that mean? We know that the Prophet ﷺ, he only did good. It's not like he sinned and stuff like that. So what do you mean his actions? Of course, he did so much good. He never sinned. How is his actions not going to get him to Jannah? Because his actions were not his creation. The actions of a human being are the creation of Allah. But that comes due to a person's will for that action to come into place. And if Allah chooses to give this person tawfiq, it means He creates that action for that person. Okay. And if Allah chooses to not give this person tawfiq, then it means that He doesn't create that action for that person. So now, for example, I will to write a book. If Allah, that's a good thing. Allah's going to reward me for as if I wrote the whole book. I'm going to get the full reward as if I wrote the whole book. But if Allah, Brother Sulaiman, I think there's a pause thing. I think that means your thing is on hold. So if you can hear me, okay, it's gone now. Okay. Anyway, what I was saying was, I will to write a book. Now, if Allah wills to give me the tawfiq to write that book, what that means is that that book will be written. Okay. So the actual action will come into place. So to summarize everything that we're trying to say here, is to say that the actions that come into existence come because of the power of Allah. Is it possible for an action of ours that we do with our free will to come without our power? No. Okay. Because okay, inshallah, I will try to do that. I'll screenshot it before we close, inshallah. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Okay. So he says that when there's a person who's a person does an action, that action is the creation of Allah. But we can obviously differentiate between actions that we choose to do and actions that we don't. What is that choice? It's not our ability to create the action. Rather, it's our ability to choose and specify what we want to do. And that's called Kasb. Okay? Kasb is what we're going to be held accountable for, and that's why Allah says, لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَعَلَيْهَا مَا اكْتَسَبَتْ. Okay? You get the reward of that which you earned. Okay? And you'll get punished for that which comes against you as a result of this kasb, as a result of what your will is. So all of that being said now, the easiest way to understand this a person might say, and this is why I'm gonna give this example right now, because you'll find online, this is the answer for some people who watch or hear or listen to people talking against the Ash'ari madhab. From this issue, now if you guys understood the entire breakdown, this I spoke for, the recording says 1 hour and 1 minute. I've been speaking on this issue for over 1 hour. Okay. Now we come to the conclusion of what it means to say a human being does not create his action and Allah is the creator of the action. Question: if I go and kill someone, am I responsible for killing that person? Yes. Everybody agrees. You'll find some people trying to criticize the Ash'ari madhab because they didn't study, for example, this hour-long lesson. They didn't understand what our statement that Allah creates the action of killing means, and we don't create it, right? So when we say we don't create the action of killing, Allah creates the action, they don't understand what that means. So what will they try to attribute? And you'll find this popularly online, it's everywhere. The people who try to speak against the Ash'ari madhab in Aqidah, they will say, look at these Ash'aris. You can easily say, and there's a video I saved about this. He's speaking in Arabic, but it's translated by someone. They translated it. So he says,
بالمذاهب للمجرمين لأنك إذا أردت أن تقتل أحدا سوف تلحقه بمسدس ثم ترميه بالمسدس فستدخل الرصاصة في جسده وبعد ذلك سيطنقص ثم يموت. فإذا جاءك القاضي وقال لك لما قتلته تقول لا فضيلة القاضي الله يهديك أنت فاهم خطأ يا فضيلة القاضي، أنت يا فضيلة القاضي فاهم خطأ، لأن الله أراد أن يموت ولكن وافقت إرادة الله دخول الرصاصة، فالموت حصل عند الرصاصة لا بالرصاصة. ومثل هؤلاء حقه أن تدعو تقول تعال 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 تعال، فإذا اقترب عندك أعطه كفا جامدا، وبعد الكف سيحس بماذا؟ بألم، فيقول أوجعتني، فيقول لا يا أخي لا تفهمني خطأ، الله أراد خلق الوجع عند ارتطام يدي بخدك. بالله هذا مذهب، هذا بالله هذا مذهب. الحمد لله. تعرفون هذا مذهب من؟ الأشاعرة.
So he says, these Ash'aris essentially believe that it's possible for a person to go and kill somebody else. And then when they get caught, they say, no, 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 no. I'm not the one who did it. No, my knife didn't cut his throat. No, no, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Allah did it. And they completely are blame free. They say, no, no, Allah's the one who did it. I didn't do it. I'm free. I'm not a killer. No, Allah did it. If you want to call someone a killer, call Allah the killer. I'm not a killer. That's what they say. Right? They say that this is the Ash'ari madhab. Where do they get this from? From our statement where we say that human beings don't create our actions. Okay. We say, if I kill someone, I didn't create killing or the death of that person. Allah created the death of that person. Allah created that action. Okay. But I had power over that. In other words, I had the ability to choose whether I want to go and move my hand here and cut his throat or take a gun and shoot him. And I had the ability to choose not to. I chose to do one. That's what I'm responsible for. How do we understand this? Easiest example. Two people, they're in a car. They're both driving the car. What does the car have? A gas pedal at the bottom. It has a steering wheel. And it has the person with their hand on the steering wheel. One person, he's pushing the gas pedal, the car's going forward. He sees somebody that he doesn't like, and he keeps going forward, smashes that person, pushes him into a wall, and then backs up and runs him over. Very graphic description, right? He kills the person that's in front of him. But how did he do it? He murdered him. Why? Because he saw him, he knew exactly that person. He said, I don't like that person, I'm going to go kill him. So he stepped on the gas, he turned the steering wheel the right way, and boom, he killed. He knew he was going to hit him with such force that he was going to kill him. The other guy who's driving the car, he's driving and he's just driving normally. He's following everything properly. All of a sudden, out of nowhere, somebody has headphones on and they're walking in the street. They don't hear the car. because they have headphones on, and because they don't hear the car, they don't realize, oh, there's a car coming like this, and they just walk right in front. Now this person, he's just normally driving. He has no idea that there's a person gonna disobey the law and cross when he's not supposed to cross. It's a green light for him. He's doing everything proper. He has no intention of killing anyone. He's a really good guy, all right? And he's doing everything within the law. He's following the speed. Everything's fine. But this person, because of his headphones, he doesn't know what's going on. He's not looking. He's looking at his phone and he's listening to something. Can't hear anything around him. Can't see when it's his turn. He steps in front. This person accidentally what? Smashes him with the car, runs him over, and kills him. Question. Are the actions different? No. The actions are the exact same. They're both sitting in the car. They're both pushing the gas pedal. They're both has their hand on the steering wheel. They both are driving maybe the same speed. They both, when they killed this person, they both killed them by smashing into them. They both basically crashed into a person. They both ran over the person. They both did the exact same action. Yet one of them had the intention to kill, and the other one had no intention of killing. In the court of law, according to Islamic capital punishments, a person who intends and willfully kills another person, he gets the death penalty. A person who mistakenly, accidentally kills someone, he has to pay blood money. He doesn't get the death penalty. Why? Because it was a mistake. He was doing everything he could normally, perfectly fine. He didn't mean to kill this guy. All of a sudden, the guy's dead. And he's like, now what? He's going to get killed? No. Islam is just. But a person who willfully went and go and murdered someone, he's going to get the death penalty. So what's the ruling of these two people? It's going to differ. One of them, he's going to get killed through the death penalty. The other one, he's going to have to pay the blood money only. How is the ruling different when the action is the exact same? The only difference is one willed to kill and the other didn't will to kill. This is what shows that the action is not what is looked at, neither in the court of law nor in the court of Allah's law. The action is not what's important. The intention behind that action is what's important. Okay. So now, when it comes to that issue that the people will say that you'll find online where people try and criticize the Ash'ari madhab, when it comes to this issue, they'll say that, when a person goes, he can go and kill someone, and then he can go to the court of law and say, oh, look, I didn't do anything. Allah killed that person. I didn't do it. I'm free. No. You're held accountable for what you will to do. And your will to do that thing, your choice to put the gun to this person's head and pull the trigger, as opposed to not doing that, that's called your ability over that action that is ineffective. That's what we mean by saying you have power to do this action, but your power is not a power of creation. Allah's the creator, and He's the only creator. So Allah's power is a power of creation. Our power is a power of choice. It's not a power of creation, right? So when we say that we don't create the action, it doesn't mean that we're not responsible for it. Rather, nobody's responsible for the action that they do. They're responsible for the will behind that action. Okay. And then there's a degree of responsibility for the action as well, such as the person who accidentally kills someone, he still has to pay blood money. So there's still a responsibility, but the responsibility differs, not based off of the action, but based off of the will. And that will is the person's, that will that a person has to choose this over that. That is what is meant by our ability to do something, and that ability being an ineffective ability. Make sense? Hopefully this is all clear, inshallah. As for the rest of the notes, it's everything that I explained, so we'll just read it. Number one, under what we say, under the statement of Ahlulsunnah, he says, I wrote that two attributes of power exist for one action. So the one action of me moving my hand forward and backwards, there's two powers that are connected to it. One is the power that is ineffective, which is my choice to do this thing over not do this thing. That's my power that is ineffective. Allah's power is also connected to my hand, but that power is a power of creation. So Allah's creating the attributes to exist in this location and then in this location. Allah's creating that. So there's two attributes of power for one action. The two attributes differ in their connection though. And that's why we can say that two attributes can exist on in one action. Okay. Number two, I said the connection of these powers is different, which is what I just explained. Ours has no effect of creation, and Allah's does. Okay, we don't create something, Allah creates the thing. Okay, and that's all of what I just explained. Number three, this is a must because both must have power. If not, okay, so both of us must have the ability to do something. If I want to move my hand forward, I have to have the ability to move my hand forward, right? Or if I say that I moved my hand forward, it means that I have the ability to move my hand forward. So I have to have some sort of ability. Allah also has to have some sort of ability because if not, number one, it would necessitate that Allah is not all powerful. So if we say Allah doesn't have power over my hand moving forward, it means Allah is not all powerful, and that's impossible. So I wrote can't be, all right? And the second thing it would necessitate is that there's no difference between an action done by my choice and my heartbeat. My heartbeat's not done by my choice, but my hand moving forward is done by my choice. It would necessitate that there's no difference between these two, but by default and by necessity, there is a difference between the two, right? So what is that difference? That difference is, so what results of this is that there has to be, I have to have the ability to do this action, and Allah also has to have the ability to do this action. Okay, my ability is not effective. Allah's ability is has the effect of creation. Number four is the last thing, we call our ability kasb. So it's just another word for saying qudra, and ability and power to do something. We call it kasb, and we call Allah's power, Allah's ability, we call it power, because Allah says in the Quran, laha ma kasabat, that for every soul is what it earns. It uses this word kasb, right, to refer to our actions. And for Allah's power, Allah says, Wallahu ala kulli shay'in qadir. Allah is all powerful over everything. And that will conclude today's lesson, inshaAllah ta'ala. If there are any questions, let me know, inshaAllah, and I will do my best to respond.